Hello, so this morning we're here with Maurice Pentel, and Maurice is a thought leader, a content creator. He's worked with some of the largest organisations, and he works on experience design and helping us understand emotions within our contact centres. So Maurice has kindly offered to share some thoughts about how we can improve and move beyond sort of the COVID lockdown situation within our contact centres. So Maurice, over to yourself.
Thank you, Michelle, and hello everyone. Thanks for spending a bit of time with me. Michelle's right, but a little bit wrong. I'm only going to talk about the next 8 weeks. Because the next 8 weeks is going to be a bit of a Groundhog Day thing, and the next 8 weeks is going to go into the following 8 weeks. And at the moment, there's a big lag between what we really scientifically understand and what's happening, and our ability to do strategy and to think about things is relatively limited. So right now, what I want to do is just talk about 4 things over the next 8 weeks, and those 4 things are really taking the technology off the table for the agent, building the right habits for contact center agents who we've now moved home, etc. How different supporting the customer is going to be, and setting some new goals. And really, you're going to be going through this cycle over the next period of time a lot. And I think, Michelle, you'll know that although people are talking about what's going to happen post COVID-19, and maybe some people are going to close their contact centers, etc. At the moment, we're not even through it. So we need to be constantly thinking about just, what's important over the next period of time.
Yeah.
So let's start by the first, talk about the first one, which is taking the technology off the table. And really, given that your agents are sitting at home, then the last thing they want to be thinking about is whether or not all the apps on their machines are working properly, whether their connection is down, all of those kind of things, and talking to IT about them. It's an unnecessary stress. Time can seem very subjective to an agent sitting alone at home. So there are things that you can get, and I'm not advocating one or another, but I have been around this stuff for 25 years. You can test an agent's desktop all the way through to the customer's device. And really that ought to be a piece of measurement that ought to now be sinking in as a priority, using polling software. Yeah. The second thing is, I think we've really got to think about upping our game in terms of internal communications. Our cultures are now going to change, and I'm going to talk about that more in a different way, but the idea that technology is going to enable a new culture is a fundamental thing. And then, of course, we need to look at all of our other channels that are the contact center supports, that are supported by the contact center, and make sure that they've got the right tone of voice and that we're making the most of them. So there's stuff like that to be doing. And then you've got to expect that someone in IT support is going to be spending a little longer talking to your agents. And I'm going to explain that in a little more detail when I talk about culture. But basically, this is the unknown, and it's different, and people will be surprisingly reassured to talk to other people within an organization. So, you've got to allow a little bit of bonding time.
Well,
And then the final thing.
Maurice, sorry to interrupt you, but we've noticed that the length of duration of our communications and contact has significantly increased. So I can imagine in the contact centres that's also very much the case.
I think so, and I think that as we move forward, we're going to have to be spending some time over the next period rethinking our metrics and rethinking about things like average handling time. There are really a couple of parts to that, and the first one is that I think it's true to say that customers and agents are being more emotionally honest with each other. And that's actually a good thing from our point of view. It builds a human face on the organization. But also that this is much more important communication at this time than at any other time. People are, this is a different world. And if I just move on past the last little bit here of security, that's the end of IT. And I actually want to talk now about colleagues and about building the right habits. And the reason I want to talk about that is because we're talking about how long the conversation lasts and what we're saying in it. And that's really, we manage experience, and you talked about me designing customer experience. Well, we build experiences by creating little habits. So yes, we will use scripts where they are legally appropriate, but I've found the most effective way of changing a contact center is to build a series of tiny habits that change the day. And so the first thing that contact center operators need to do is to recognize that life has changed. And I know that that seems simple, but I mean, everything has changed. And therefore we need to, you know, there's a little bit of root and branch that we've got to do. So the first thing is we've got to think about the spirit of the team. And so that's banter and gossiping between the team between calls. And one of the things that I've already recommended to an organization is they spin up team rooms where people can go and are encouraged to go after every few calls to chat with their colleagues. So like Zoom rooms and many other brands apply, this is a huge time for us to create new habits digitally, because creating the habit is what will create the culture. In other words, just opening up a Zoom room for my teams is not going to get it done. Setting a good example and getting people to join in is a really important part. So they still feel like they're engaged with the same people. You know, and then obviously,
sorry to interrupt you again. We did that ourselves. We've set up some team groups, and for things like role playing and sort of training and development as well, and sharing ideas. And you know, those breakout rooms I think have been really powerful and important for us. And I think that's a really great idea for a lot of contact centres to sort of, if they can take that on for their people.
Well, then you're right, and what you then lead me into is the logical next point. So if you like, that was fun, but now what we're talking about is how do we manage people, continuously improve their performance and those things. And I think everything from the team leader, the supervisor interaction, through to training and development needs a refresh, and you know, needs some rework. And those breakout rooms you're talking about, we're starting to do them naturally, but building them as a conscious habit is something that people need to think about, which is why we've done this guide for you, so people can remember this. Yeah. And then the next thing is really it's about mental welfare, and I want to just talk about mental welfare. So we're all dealing with a different world. We need members of the team, not us, to bring the fun. Okay, so it's members of the team who create the fun normally. Personally, at the moment, I'm getting too much fun, too many funny jokes and memes, but we need to redress that balance so people are having fun together. We also need to recognize that this is a stressful time. I think I've spoken, I don't know, in the last 4 or 5 weeks to about 100 agents, something like that. And I'd say that the stress of it is one of the key things that people are struggling with. Because I do train people all around the world. So, you know, I've been checking in with team leaders and supervisors and agents, or rather they've all been checking in with me. You know, the whole question of stress, isolation, of dealing with our highly emotional customers at difficult times, all of these things need support. Yeah. So, you know, emotional support is really the mental welfare piece.
And that's across the board, isn't it, as well, Maurice? I mean, you know, we talk to a lot of leaders and directors, and I think everyone, I mean, myself included, everyone's feeling exhausted by the, you know, the process, the situation we're all in, the lockdown, you know, the new ways of working, the Zooming, you know, it's impacting everyone so much, isn't it?
Well, here is the science explained really simply. Okay, because I am fundamentally, although I know a lot of people think of me as a program director, I'm fundamentally a scientist. So here's the thing. Everything in your world has changed. How you do work, your relationships with your family and everything. Now, do you drive, Michelle?
I do, yeah.
Okay, have you ever driven home and thought about other things and wondered that you've arrived home, and we call that habit relaxation?
Yeah.
Okay, now imagine you've gone on holiday, and when you first arrive, there's quite a bit of stress. You don't know where the things are and everything. Okay, now imagine you've gone on holiday in your own life, and everything now looks as different as though it was a holiday. So emotional exhaustion is a current state that is highly predictive. A proportion of the population are having more extraordinary dreams. A lot of people are experiencing all kinds of binge and opposite behaviors. We're in we're in an emotionally churning time, and it's only by building a routine and some habits that we're able to stay in control. So because I build experience for a living, I already, and I'm by no means perfect, but I have an exercise routine, I have a dance routine, I have a funny routine, I have 3 things with my family, 5 things with my colleagues, my day, well, I've already said exercise, and that's just to keep me stable. And it works most of the time, because I get into a supermarket and some person walks past me quickly, And I think, yes, because you can walk faster than COVID-19. And I want to hit them over the head with my basket. So we're all a work in progress.
Mhm.
We're all under a huge amount of stress and we're all emotionally exhausted. That's why we've got to continuously work on habits, because habits can take us from 1 hour to the next. And right now, that's what we're dealing with. And then the final thing, I guess, that I'd say under that heading is things like mindfulness. So training people to breathe for 2 minutes in a slow and consistent way, getting them to think about times when they have felt completely at peace. Yeah, getting them to think of silly things. So the one thing I don't want you to think about now is an elephant. And you see, you've smiled, but it's
All I'm
stuff
thinking
like...
about now is an elephant, Maurice. That's the first, because you just told me not to think about it.
And so it is about engineering, it is about creating a new kind of experience that helps everyone get through the day. But what I'd also stress, having said all of that, it is that the trick, and you'll have become successful when everybody is contributing to that, not just one part. And then the final thing is to help keep people motivated, a little bit of learning every day will make them go home at the day feeling they've had a good day, or rather make them end their working day by feeling like they have improved their skills, they've had a bit of fun, they've had all of those pieces. So I think that's quite, that's a hell of a lot to change. Yeah, but actually we need to do that in a systemic way, because what we did was brilliant. We moved a huge number of people out of the contact center really quickly. Now we've got to get them operational. And by operational, that doesn't mean that they're answering the phones. That means that there's an element of dealing with the customer. And we're not there yet. I don't think. I think the people who've been long prepared for it are there yet, but I don't think everybody's there yet. So now, if I will, because I know I've taken up quite a bit of time and people will have to get back to their work. So I just want to talk briefly about the customer, and then you and I might chat through some of these things, and then I'll just cover this and one other bit, and then we'll see where the conversation goes from there. So again, dealing with the customer, we've got to recognize that the customer's life's changed. Yeah, there are people stuck at home with their children for the first time in their lives. There are people who've lost their income. There's 3.5 million new people on the dole. A huge number of self-employed who've lost their way of earning their living. You can't go to the shops. You can't have a haircut. I mean, I've only got a picture of you, Michelle, on my screen. I do not want to look at me and my hair, which is slowly going the full Albert Einstein.
Mine's just getting longer and bigger and thicker every day.
Yeah, but that just makes you look younger, whereas mine's just making me look...
True.
Mine's just making me look older and crazier. So what does the customer need right now? And the first thing they're going to need is more general information. They want to know what your business is doing in terms of being their supplier during the outbreak, which is quite reasonable. Are you open? Are you closed? How's it working with you? Let's keep them off the telephone by making sure that that's available to them in other channels. Now, they will probably need to update their information with you. So for about, I think it's 25% of the population, their employment status has changed, which is a staggering amount.
Yeah.
So they're going to need to talk to all of their suppliers, and their suppliers are the ones who right now are keeping the lights burning and are struggling the most. So they can expect that. They're going to need to negotiate with customers. And here, I'm going to suggest that negotiating with customers needs to be a question of triage. If you're currently looking at your customer's situation, especially in relation to how they might be able to pay their bills and how long you support them, I think what you need to do is to build a series of simple categories, 1, 2, and 3 maybe. Those people who will review in a couple of months, those people who we need to talk to today, and those people who we can talk to in a while's time. And there'll be a combination of algorithms that people will use to manage that. But I think when you're on the phone negotiating with customers, you've got to be much more empathetic. You've got to be much more engaged. You've got to be more human, because they know they're talking to someone whose kids may be in the other room. Take advantage of that. Use that to help your agents to have more realistic conversations with customers. But right now, your customers don't exactly know where they are. So for me personally, I've had to contact at least 8 of my suppliers to find out if they're open, in order to fill in one form, because my eldest daughter was doing something, and that took 4 days. So customers are not necessarily going to have all the information ready. So the whole question of triaging the negotiation, but making them feel as though they're engaged, is great. I think that first call resolution, excuse me, I think that first call resolution now needs to really be redefined as the customer is okay to go away for the next 8 weeks or 6 weeks. We need time to get on top of this. Yeah. We need emotional support time. And we need to be building that into a length of calls, what we say to, how we tell our agents to talk to customers, and those pieces. And also, we talk about making sure that we have the voice of the business, the genuine voice of the business. I think that voice has an opportunity now to become more human, and that businesses should take advantage of that to better their relationship and their understanding with customers. So I think that's quite important. And to summarize the whole lot for my friends in the customer experience basics area, it's basically reviewing every aspect of the customer journey, looking at how it works and seeing how we can deconstruct it. And you may remember I've just spoken a lot about habits, but let's build some new habits. Let's use some technology in a better way, smarter way, and let's make the customer experience one that recognizes that this may be one of 5 or 6 phone calls they have today. Yeah. And that's going to be more emotionally impactful for our agents. So I guess those are the big things. And then obviously what that leads us to is thinking about what the next 8 weeks worth of goals are. I've already talked about wrap-up time. I've already talked about emotional support. I think we need to concentrate more on listening to what's going on in conversations rather than looking at surveys. To a great extent, I would switch off right now outbound surveys. So surveys rely on comparison between times, and your customer satisfaction this month will have no bearing at all to customer satisfaction this month a year ago. So that's science. That's basic. Yeah, all of those people currently working in customer insight, go help listen to conversations for the moment. Yeah. I've talked about the number of calls being handled by an individual agent. We've got to be ready for the fact that an agent can't pick up a call because the baby's screaming. Yeah, that they can't pick up a call because this is the first chance they've had to take a loo break. And normally they'd be having a conversation with someone about covering them. So there's just some smoothness in the operation of the team that makes us feel that we're part of something. I've worked in so many contact centers over the years, from I know Lloyd's Bank and Capital Ones through to the big telcos back in the day, and you always felt you were part of the business, part of the thing. You know, part of Barclaycard, part of Bank of America, whatever it happens to be. And we really need to make agents feel like that. I think that's very important. And then, and I know people are going to find this controversial, and you may completely disagree with me, but I think we've got to talk about emotion in really simple terms. I don't like talking about emotional intelligence. It assumes emotional stupidity, and that doesn't cover where we are. What we want to know is, did the customer sound okay? Did they sound worried? You know, we could describe a conversation in 2 or 3 sentences and understand it. The universal language is not mathematics or scores, it's conversation. So let's just have simple conversations that said, I've spoken to 5 customers today and I've answered their questions and they've all gone away scared. You'll learn more about what's going on by having simple conversations, by behaving as though this was family. And that's something we need to teach and bed down. So again, you know, if there is a voice of the customer stuff there, you know, use it. But that's really the thing. And so stay safe and build good habits is there you go. Now I'm going to stop sharing, and you and I can now just talk through any of those.
Well, I think, you know, firstly, it's just there's some excellent steps there and food for thought. And I think, you know, above all and everything that you've talked about, you know, it's the simplicity, I think, because we naturally overcomplicate so much, don't we? But sort of getting back to the basics and keeping things simple and sort of being more human, you know, these are sort of key criteria, I think, at this time, and sort of really good signposts and steps for people. So thank you so much for sharing that, Maurice. It was really great.
My pleasure. We've got to remember that most people are scared, most people are exhausted, their sources of information, their social lives, everything has changed. You know, it's the contact center industry, you know, from my discussions over the last month, feels massively under siege. Well, we moved a lot of people, yeah, but we are also the people who everyone is clapping on a Thursday night. We've kept the country open. Now, I don't know the science of when we will properly reopen, and it'll be okay for me to walk down the river and to see my kids and all of those things, and neither does anybody else. But by building the right sort of habits, we're taking what therapists would say and combining that into how we run our organizations. Because right now we could all do with a little bit of really simple therapy.
Well, I'll stop the recording on that one then, Maurice, and I'd say thank you very much, and I'll just stick with you now. Hold on a sec.